Everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. I have some details about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial to share with you. But before I dive in to days 7 and 8, I wanted to make one retraction from my last update. I mentioned that there were schoolgirl uniforms that were allowed into evidence, and I've since found out that that was incorrect. The judge actually denied the prosecutor's request to admit that evidence. So now on to the new stuff. First, the trial may end earlier than we originally expected. You guys may recall I said that it might go into next year, but prosecutors are now saying that they're going to wrap up their side this week. So who knows how many witnesses or what the defense has to say or do, but it doesn't look like it's going to run that long. And there were also a lot of photos shared this week. You may have heard about this. There were a lot of photos of Maxwell and Epstein that had not been released yet, as far as I know, that showed them hugging and kissing or otherwise showing affection to each other. So that kind of undermines her statements, kind of trying to distance herself from him and say, well, I had no idea what he was doing. I mean, they were clearly together a lot, as what witnesses have to say. They also traveled all over the place together. And I wanted to backtrack for a minute about something I've been seeing online. As I mentioned to you guys, there were CDs and photos that were found in his safe when they raided his place in New York. And I saw a lot of talk online about how these photos and CDs had already been tagged by the FBI or someone, that there was already tape around them saying evidence, which indicated that those items had already been viewed by the authorities and then returned. And people are trying to make this into kind of a big gotcha moment for the FBI. But remember, Epstein was already arrested and charged before this. There was a massive case being built against him back in the mid-2000s, and his Florida home was raided back then. So yes, they may have already collected these items, and they had already put enough evidence together that they could have put him away for life all the way back then. Remember, it was Alex Acosta, Trump's labor secretary from 2017 to 2019, who at the time of the first Epstein investigation, I believe it was 2007, he was a federal prosecutor, and he decided to sweep all of this under the rug and give Epstein that unbelievable sweetheart deal of only 13 months of work release, not even 13 months of prison. The guy left up to 12 hours every day and only slept there. He was only in jail on Sundays. That's it, because of Alex Acosta. And consider this is something that I think is underreported, reviewed. During Trump's administration, they had dozens, maybe even hundreds of scandals, right? Throughout his presidency about all manner of things, but a lot of people in his cabinet. Yet he never fired anyone. Acosta was the only one who Trump fired immediately when his part in the Epstein case started to boil over in mainstream media. I wonder why Trump would be so concerned about being tied to Acosta and his part in letting Epstein off the hook. Just a little suspicious, right? Especially considering that allegation made by someone who listed her name as Katie Johnson, who accused Trump of raping her at Epstein's New York home. Just a thought. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up and let people know that it's not really a bombshell discovery as some people believed or portrayed it. Next, I wanted to share a bit about what happened when another alleged victim took the stand. So prosecutors called the third of 4 accusers to the witness stand on day 7 of the trial. Her testimony carried over into day 8. The woman was identified only by her first name, which was Carolyn. And she told the jury that Virginia Roberts Gouffre was the one who recruited her and introduced her to Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein when she was only 13 years old. She said that she already had dropped out of school. Her mother was completely checked out. She was a drug addict and an alcoholic. Carolyn also said that she had been raped and molested by her own grandfather, starting at the age of only 4 years old. So you can imagine what that does to someone. This is so common with victims of sexual assault. They get re-victimized over and over again because your self-esteem, your self-worth is utterly destroyed by this, and it makes you vulnerable to the next predator that comes along. This is what normal people, not predators, don't understand, and it's what predators understand too well, and they use it. They use that hurt, that pain, that fear, that self-doubt to re-exploit their victims. And she did confide in Epstein and Maxwell about what had happened to her. According to Carolyn, Epstein started violating her when she was 14 years old. And she said by the age of 16, she had already had more than 100 sexual encounters with him. She said that initially, Maxwell would call to schedule the massages, quote unquote, but then a woman named Sarah Kellen took over the scheduling. Kellen is someone, if you've been watching my show, you might recognize that name. She's been named by other Epstein victims as well as taking control and being a part of this and helping to lure these girls in and manipulate them. And she allegedly, Kellen meaning, took nude photos of Carolyn, and she told Carolyn that she would be paid $500 to $600 for them. And the first time Carolyn was assaulted by Epstein, she said that Maxwell instructed Gouffre to go upstairs with Carolyn, take her upstairs, and, quote, show her what to do. She said that in that first encounter, she watched Gouffre have sex with Epstein. She only massaged Epstein in that first instance, but she had to be in her underwear. So just so vile. And allegedly, he paid her $300 for massaging him and then sitting there and watching him have sex with Gouffre. On a subsequent visit, though, Maxwell allegedly walked into the massage room and Carolyn was standing there naked. And she said that Maxwell touched her in various, private places on her body. And Maxwell told her that she had a, quote, great body for Mr. Epstein and his friends. And this was apparently how Carolyn was earning money to live. She didn't have an education. She didn't have a family to help her. And so she relied on this money that he was paying her. And she admitted that she also brought other girls to Epstein. She said she brought him a 15-year-old and two 16-year-olds because she said that once she turned 18, she was too old for Epstein. She also said that she started using drugs pretty heavily to block out the encounters, the memories of these encounters with Epstein. And the defense just pounced on that. They pounced on her past drug use, her current use of medications to apparently treat anxiety and mental illness. And they tried, as they did with another accuser, to blame the drugs for her faulty memory. They also tried to use Carolyn's settlement with Epstein's estate against her. Again, all that settlement does, in my mind, is prove that she's telling the truth because they're not going to just hand her millions of dollars. They declined other girls, from my understanding. So they obviously believed that she was telling the truth, that she obviously had enough evidence to show that she was victimized. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid her. And if she was only after the money, then why is she testifying in a case where she's not going to get any money, where money isn't an issue? This case isn't about money. No one's going to get paid if Maxwell is convicted. The only thing that happens is that Maxwell goes to prison. The only payoff is seeing this subhuman, vile woman behind bars for the rest of her heinous life. But they tried, and apparently Carolyn yelled at them. She yelled at the defense attorney at one point, and she said, quote, "Money will never fix what that woman has done to me. What she did was wrong. She takes vulnerable young girls." And apparently someone was that in the media was in the courtroom watching this all go down. They said that when they were attacking her, when they were trying to paint her as just some gold digger and, someone who didn't really know what happened to her herself, apparently one of the jurors started shaking their head. So they actually ended her day of testimony early, or the whole day early after she finished testifying. Another witness that the prosecution called was a second Epstein pilot named David Rogers. Rogers was with Epstein for decades, all the way from 1991 until 2019. So, until he was arrested, I guess. And as with his other pilot, Visosky, Rogers described Maxwell as the number 2 in command. In addition to his testimony, though, he also brought in and provided several documents which show who flew on Epstein's plane, including his own personal flight log that he kept during that time. So while he was on the stand, he corroborated a lot of the victim's testimony and other details about Maxwell and Epstein. He confirmed meeting and flying victim number 1. That was the woman that they referred to as Jane. She was the first one to testify. And the flight logs contained her full true name. And they show that she flew with Epstein numerous times. The logs also showed that she was on board at various times when Maxwell was on board, when Gouffre was flying, and then there were also numerous other passengers at times between 1996 and 2001. So there could be other people out there who could corroborate this, but they may not have wanted to come forward because maybe they are also co-conspirators. I don't know. Gouffre was also shown on the flight logs 28 times, just over a 2-year period of time. So between 2000 and 2001. And Rogers also confirmed that Sarah Kellen became involved in Epstein's operation, or more involved, I should say, in the early to mid 2000s. And that Maxwell at that time seemed like she was starting to separate from Epstein, and that he believed, this Rogers guy believed, that she had met someone else. So the best that the defense could come up with to try to refute this guy's testimony was bringing up how many other women flew on Epstein's plane who had accents. That was their best shot. Yeah, like, this grown man who worked for Epstein for decades couldn't tell the difference between Ghislaine Maxwell and another woman with an accent. I guess that's what they were getting at. Or maybe that these victims didn't know the difference between Maxwell and another woman just because they had an accent. Yeah. Unbelievable. It just shows you, though, they're grasping at straws. They really must not have anything if that's the best they can do. So, all right, guys, I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know what happens from here on out. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.